Hey, YouTube, hey, Kai here checking in with another video. Hey, today, hey, we got a YouTuber gets life in prison for hiring a hit. Let's go and get into this video, bro.
This YouTuber made wearing Supreme in New York City a dangerous thing for years, terrorizing the streets, harassing strangers, and building a viral.
If y'all don't know who that is, I think his name is like YM8 or Big 8, some shit like that. He wear bathed in 8. Like, he wear nothing but bathed in 8. As you see, bait.
Supreme in New York City a dangerous thing for years, terrorizing the streets, harassing strangers, and building a viral empire out of pure hatred for a clothing brand, only to end up serving 28 years to life in prison. And this is all because his reckless actions cost the life of an innocent family man. So it's safe to say we have quite the tragic yet wild video today. And it's probably the most extreme case of fashion beef spiraling into real-world consequences that we've ever seen, especially because this story actually starts back in 2016 to 2017 and only reached its conclusion now recently in 2025, almost a decade later. So meet Anthony Lopez, who became known online as YM a man whose obsession with fashion drama would destroy multiple lives, including his own. However, to understand how this whole disaster unfolded, we first need to know what these clothing brands meant to people around the world, especially in New York City during the late 2010s. Because let's go back to 2016, and Supreme had basically become the holy grail of streetwear culture, and people were literally sleeping on the sidewalks outside of Supreme stores just to buy their new box.
I remember this, bro. See, I'm from DC, but like I used to look at Complex, and Complex used to do like a fashion. I mean, Complex is all fashion, but they used to do like a release day, like, oh, we going to the latest drop, so it'll be like some shit like this, like they just go in line, like stand in line, like, oh, what you here to get it, or something like that. Oh, do you got the first piece? What did you get? Type shit. But shit, nah, I ain't doing this. Not for
logo hoodies. Meanwhile, you have a bathing ape, mostly referred to as Bape. That was Supreme's flashy Japanese competitor. While Supreme kept things more minimalistic, at least, and grungy, Bape, they went full rainbow camouflage and cartoon apes. But both brands had die-hard followers who treated their choices kind of like a religion. Then obviously you had the casual streetwear people who maybe owned both or wanted to own both, but your average person did not own any of this, as we're talking about $500 plus hoodies back in 2016. Ironically, now both of these brands are cheaper because they're still like, you could probably get a Supreme tee or Supreme hoodie for what, like $300 now, and the dollar is worth definitely way less than what it was back in 2016. That also has a lot to do with the hype on both of them pretty much dwindling. But back then, Anthony Lopez decided that his preference was Bape, and that needed to become his purpose in life. So around 2016, Anthony or YM Bape started showing up to social media with one simple mission: convince the world that Supreme was garbage and anyone wearing it deserved to be publicly shamed. Now, Anthony wasn't some fashion insider or an industry expert. He was also just a regular dude from New York who happened to have an extremely strong opinion.
What they all do, all New Yorkers are the same,
on what other people wore. And I guess what made him different was his willingness to take these opinions directly to the streets and all up in people's face. Because instead of just posting angry comments online like most haters, YM Bape, he grabbed his phone and started physically confronting strangers in Manhattan. He'd walk up to random people wearing Supreme gear and start shouting at them about their fashion choices. And according to interviews he gave later, YM Bape actually started doing this stuff without even recording it. He was just walking around Soho genuinely harassing people because he felt like he was just very passionate that he hated Supreme and he wanted Bape to be the big thing. Eventually, his friends then convinced him to start filming these encounters, and that's where everything changed.
So you were just running up on people who were wearing Supreme and just flexing on them? Just why? Because you were in the mood? You just didn't with it?
Yeah, because I was so adjusted to Supreme.
Okay.
Because these videos started going viral on Reddit, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook pages everywhere. And people couldn't figure out why he was doing this. There was a lot of speculation if these were just skits or if this guy's actually just lost his mind over some hoodies. And these weren't just verbal arguments either, because YM Bape, he would physically grab Supreme hats off of people's heads and just throw them on the ground. He'd push strangers, he'd trip them while they were walking, and then he would also do this whole like beating on his chest thing while shouting catchphrases.
Supreme, homie. Yeah? Supreme. Stop wearing that. Yeah? Why you laughing? They ain't playing with you. He still being the trick that you man. You know what I do best.
It was definitely extremely cringy to watch, but that cringiness is exactly what made the content go extremely viral, because especially back then, this behavior wasn't all over the place. Now it kind of is, but then it was somewhat unique, even though how tragic it is. Because within months, Bape transferred from some like random street harasser to a legitimate internet personality. He was getting thousands of followers who was genuinely entertained by the chaos or genuinely supported his anti-Supreme crusade. And this was also during a time where Supreme got so popular, but it was so expensive that a lot of people just started hating on it because, yeah, like the $1,200 hoodie with just Supreme on it did not make sense for most people. So a lot of people started clowning on the people who were actually buying that kind of stuff. But here's the thing, even if you knew who he was or followed his content, you still weren't safe from being pressed if you wore the wrong brand around him. Because this situation got so intense that people started genuinely avoiding certain neighborhoods in Manhattan if they were wearing Supreme. And Bape wasn't just targeting random pedestrians anymore. Because one of his most infamous moments was when he approached the actor Jonah Hill on the street, which led to this footage showing that Jonah was probably extremely confused and maybe slightly startled.
Got the big Supreme. He my man. I ain't gonna violate. Supreme cake out here. You gonna hear about me soon. I'm violating all Supreme. I'm out here. We out here. We out here.
Social media back then was definitely very different because this was also during the time.
What's up with you, bruh? Like, what's up with you, my boy? You got that fucking awesome up top though.
Of Boonk Gang. Yes, it's safe to say it was pretty cursed back then. But as his internet fame grew, something unexpected happened. Major figures in hip-hop began acknowledging his existence. He was spotted hanging around rappers like Chief Keef, Playboi Carti, and even brought on stage during a Lil Uzi Vert concert. But the whole thing reached peak validation when XXXTentacion referenced him in a song, basically turning the YM chest-beating signature move into a mainstream hip-hop lyric. And this led him to being interviewed on No Jumper, where he got to explain his Supreme hatred for hundreds of thousands of viewers. And at this point, terrorizing people for their clothing choices literally became his career. And with internet fame came some money, and Bape started investing into expensive jewelry and questionable street activity. And this is also around the time where he really starts leaning into his anti-Supreme brand. Because in 2018, he pulled off the stunt where he replaced actual Supreme advertisements around New York with posters of his own face.
I'm gonna tell you what's going on. Supreme, I'm an 8.
But he was definitely not finished with the street confrontations because they were getting more and more wild. He started storming into actual Supreme retail stores, throwing around the merchandise, and actually screaming at employees and customers. There were also videos of him getting into serious street fights over the brand. He was also arrested multiple times for these incidents, but every time he just kept on coming back. He just kept pushing things further and further, like literally beating someone up for wearing Supreme. And obviously, I can't show that full clip. But it was because of this behavior that he then later on claimed that someone put a bounty on him because of all the alleged harassment he's been doing. And eventually, that caught up with him. And he got jumped by a group of people who were apparently fed up with his antics. And obviously, I can't show that clip either. But in April of 2019, everything changed when Bape got shot 3 times in the chest. And the shooting happened near some housing projects on New York's Lower East Side, where Bape and his crew were allegedly based. When photos of him in the hospital started circulating online, people had mixed reactions. Some felt bad for him, and many thought he'd finally pushed the wrong person too far. Bape then posted some hospital photos with some dramatic captions and even filmed a music video from his hospital bed, basically turning his shooting into more content for his brand. But according to prosecutors, Bape was convinced that someone from a rival neighborhood was responsible for shooting him. And that's where his story took a big turn from internet drama to an actual criminal conspiracy. So from what I can tell, what happened next had nothing to do with Supreme or Bape or even internet fame. It was street level retaliation that would end an innocent person's life. Because after getting out of the hospital, Anthony looked for someone to handle his revenge. In June of 2019, a young guy reached out to him through some text messages, offering to carry out a hit for a surprisingly small amount of money. Anthony then accepted this offer and they started planning the attack. So on June 12, 2019, Bape coordinated with several people to finalize their plan. He arranged transportation and logistics for what was supposed to be a targeted hit on whoever he thought was responsible for shooting him. So that night, the crew he hired took a taxi to the rival neighborhood. They were then looking for a specific person, but the way things ended was not how it was supposed to happen. So in the early morning hours of July 13th, they ended up near an apartment building where James Weeks was hanging out with his friends after a typical Friday night. James was a 35-year-old who had worked for Citibank and had absolutely nothing to do with any gang activity or street beef. At around 2:40 in the morning, as James was walking to his car, one of Bape's hired shooters opened fire at him from about 150 feet away. James Weeks was hit in the face, and although he made it to the hospital, he never made it out of there. And meanwhile, the person Bape was actually after was nowhere to be found. And what makes the situation even more tragic is James Weeks left behind a wife and 4 children. According to his family, he had no connection to any gang activity at all. He was literally just visiting his friends on a Friday evening and nothing more. But later that day, Bape was actually sent a screen.
That's why Gilbert Arenas said some shit that stick with me. Like, he said it's about his son when he was driving the Tesla, the Cybertruck. He basically said, like, son, I understand that you want to drive and all that shit late at night, bro, but at a certain time, 10 o'clock, that's when everything, like, revs up to the next level. Like, police, they want everything moving. They want all bullshit, because that's demon hours, bro. And that goes from all the way across the board. Bro, you outside at 2:40. I would have been in the crib, bro. I would have been home, bro. What the fuck am I outside at 2:40 for? I'm not blaming the man that passed away, but I'm saying, bro, what am I outside at 2:40 for, bro? Like, that shit just crazy.
Screenshot of an Instagram post about the shooting that simply said innocent bystander. And what makes things worse is he knew they targeted the wrong person, but he didn't seem to care. Because even after learning they ended an innocent father's life, Anthony didn't stop planning. The shooters got arrested within weeks, but while they sat in jail, he kept calling them and plotting to finish what they'd started. In one recorded jail call from January of 2020, Bape told one of the arrested shooters that he had $4,000 ready for another hit. He was offering to pay double what he originally paid the first time, even though an innocent man was already gone, because of his desire for revenge. And what's wild to me is he was doing this over jail calls, and for some reason this was going on for months. The guy was visiting and calling the people who ended James Weeks' life, trying to get them to complete his original plan. But unfortunately for Bape or Anthony, he was arrested in December of 2021, more than 2 years after James lost his life. And the legal proceedings revealed the full scope on what had actually been happening. This wasn't just some internet personality who got carried away with content creation. His whole Supreme hating character and banging on the chest thing was apparently connected to gang affiliations that most of his internet followers probably had no idea about. And during the trial, prosecutors showed evidence that Bape felt zero remorse for what had happened. Even while locked up awaiting trial, the people managing his account were posting smiling photos of him in jail on social media. So in December of 2024, a jury found Bape guilty of murder.
Man, I say that shit all the time, bro. Y'all niggas go to jail, bro. Y'all love that shit, fool. Bro, I don't understand how niggas go to jail and just be with the biggest smile on their face. Like, they love that shit, bro. There's no way in the hell that I'm going to be going to nobody's prison facility with a smile on my face. The only time I'm going to jail is based upon my kids, bro. I say that shit all the time, bro. And that's the only way it should be, bro. I'm going to do an eternity for my kids. If something happened to my kids, that's all I'm saying. It's just one direction.
Murder in the first degree and conspiracy. And in March of 2025, he was sentenced to 28 years to life in prison. And the judge also noted that shortly after the killing, Bape and his friends were caught on video seemingly happy and celebrating despite having just caused the end of someone's life. And all the other people involved got serious prison time as well. The actual shooter is looking at life in prison, and the other conspirators got decades behind bars. So while Bape built his entire following by turning fashion preferences into street harassment, underneath all that viral content was someone involved in some actual street activity that had real-world consequences. Because what already looked like some harmful fashion beef on social media was already masking some serious criminal activity, because while his online persona was really bad, apparently he was even worse behind the scenes. An innocent family man became collateral damage and a revenge plot that stemmed from Bape's shooting. And that's how internet fame, street politics, and fashion hatred combined created one of the most tragic outcomes we've covered here on this channel.
Insane. See you on the next video.